In this edition of Locked On Capitals, hockey troll of the Caps Chirp joins the show as we talk about the game tonight in Boston. Who will be in the game? We'll talk about the lines and who will be in the game. We'll talk about the chemistry between Strome and Brown. We'll talk about the net-minding tandem. How much better is this Caps team than last year? We'll talk about all of that and more next on this edition of Locked On Capitals.
You're Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, and I want to thank you for making this your first listen or view of the day. Yes, this podcast is also available in video form, so head on over to YouTube and check it out. And when you're on YouTube, make sure and hit that subscribe button. And if you like the videos, give it a thumbs up. It really helps grow the channel. My name is Dan Holme. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So in this edition, I am joined by hockey troll of the Caps Chirp Podcast. Welcome to the show.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me. I'm glad that hockey's coming back around. It seems like the off season was incredibly shorter than it actually was. So this is a good thing, I think, for all us Caps fans and hockey fans at large.
And it is a good thing for me because, I spoke with you I want to say it was last summer or spring, and all we talked about was the season that was and the things that they should have done. Now it all starts over again tonight as the Washington Capitals take on the Bruins. And, what's going to be interesting is to see, who's going to be in the game. We saw the line pairings and that kind of thing of who is going to be in the game ostensibly. Taking a look at practice today, it was Ovi, Kuzi, and Connor Brown, Protas, Strome, and Mantha, Marcus Johansson, Lars Eller, and Oshie, and then Shiri, Dowd, and Hathaway. So that is what it's penciled in to be. What it'll actually be, in actuality, I guess, remains to be seen. When you take a look at those lineups, what are your thoughts on it? Connor McMichael, I notice, is not in that mix there. Do you think that he has a chance of cracking the game tomorrow, or do you think that he's going to be kind of an extra player out there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. If the lines are this way, it's in with the preseason, and I told you last time we talked, I barely ever watch the preseason because you don't really get to see the team at that point. But I will say that I think that I would say that what you read would be pretty close to what the opening roster would be. Not that, I'm not putting a lot of weight under it because I think Laviolette, if he doesn't like something, he's going to put the lines in the blender, and I think he should. I think it's interesting to see that Shiri's playing on the fourth line. It's good to see some young blood injected into the lineup. These are guys who had to fight really hard throughout camp and prove themselves. Overall, though, looking at this roster coming in, McMichael in, McMichael out, whatever it may be, I think the Caps are a little bit deeper, at least, noticeably deeper than last season, and I like it.
Yeah, and I like the changes that were made, and we'll talk about who those players that they picked up a little bit later in the show. But just some news around the Capitals today. Alexi Protas skating on the second line today is no surprise after the training camp he had. Connor McMichael was the favorite for that spot when camp started, but Protas impressed coaches with his improved skating and added weight. And, it's one of those tough things because I think that Connor McMichael kind of came into camp with some swagger and confidence and thinking that he had a spot, every night on this team. But then all of a sudden Protas came in and kind of just blew everyone away with what he was doing. He came in a man on a mission, and he played in every single preseason game. And then, of course, Snively also made the team. Snively seems to be one of the extra guys as well. So it seems to me that Snively and McMichael might kind of go back in and forth. What are your thoughts on Snively? Do you think that he has a starting role, or what do you think his role will be on this Capitals team this year?
Yeah, I have to look at all of the young guys. And I'll be honest, I didn't see a lot of Snively. I know that he had a really good season in Hershey, but I think that really these guys are going to be interchangeable. I don't think that it's absolutely a total cross against McMichael for not making game one. Keep in mind, the beginning of the season starts with the Caps back-to-back home and away. Boston to Toronto, or Washington to Toronto. So, maybe you're giving your, maybes a shot first and then moving around. But I don't know. I mean, it's tough, but I definitely wish him the best. I'm hoping that he performs really well for us and continues. Maybe some scoring touch would be great. If that can translate into the NHL, it'd be awesome.
Yeah, and it seems like, Snively came in and, at first last year, I think that everyone kind of thought, that, this is the Capitals just doing something nice, kind of a cameo appearance of this DC kid. But Snively had a great start to his NHL career, dishing 7 points in his first 12 games. But then, of course, that wrist injury kind of sidelined his production there. So Dowd talking about Snively. Snives plays really well. He fits in, adding he forced a lot of guys to make turnovers. He's a skill guy that can make plays. And, he isn't just here, as a favor of the Capitals. He fought and he is on this roster. If he remains on this team all season, I guess that remains to be seen. But, Connor McMichael, he did some of the right things. When he started his career with the Capitals, he was kind of scrawny and skinny. And then, he had a nutritionist and, he hit the gym and he put on some weight. Connor McMichael also held on to his roster spot. His preseason, though, didn't go exactly according to plan, though he had some strong moments. He gained muscle and size and looks to make an impact this season. So I guess that's all we can really hope for McMichael, because, to a certain extent, the Caps really put all their chips in on him, and he is one of the crown jewels of the Washington Capitals organization as far as futures are concerned. Because you take a look at this team, this rock the red era, if you will, it's getting older. The Caps are one of the oldest teams in the league, along with the Penguins and the Bruins out there. They seem, kind of all reluctant to make change. So it's good that you're slowly starting to, see these younger players integrate into the team. When I talked about on your show there, is that Faravari is the first player in some time to crack this roster and stay on this roster. It really doesn't seem like the Capitals are in the green banana business. They want wins right now, and they want it primarily because this is the last 4 years of Alex Ovechkin, playing in the NHL and in hockey. What is your thoughts on the Capitals' reluctance to go younger? Is it a Laviolette thing? Because I noticed it to a certain extent with Barry Trotz as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a huge knock on Trotz, but look what that got us, right? A cup. So it's tough to I mean, and I somewhat agree with Barry Trotz's ideology there, though. It's that, there is no development in the NHL. It's not a developmental league. You prove yourself, you develop in the AHL, and then you come out and you perform night in and night out as consistently as you can. So, I mean, I think it really sucks to be a prospect drafted by the Washington Capitals in the past 10 years, man. I mean, like we said before Faviari, it was what, Tom Wilson is the last guy that we drafted that came up. The top 6 is locked in, that very little movement there unless you're a standout. And even then somebody's got to be going down with injury. The 4th line has been solidified for years now. And these guys are getting shots on the 3rd line, which is tough. It's the toughest line to play in hockey. I think you're, expected to perform, put up points on the score sheet, and you can't give up any. If you have a good 3rd line, you can find a lot of good mismatches there. So really, your 2A or 2B line more than a 3rd. So especially on a team like the Caps, who expect offense, and we're a high-powered offense, and that's just how we play. So. Definitely tough. Do not envy the guy who has to make the decisions, both in the coaching staff and management. But at the same day, I do believe that it's win now. Draft picks are funny money. Ovechkin's got 4 more years. Let's give it our best.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that Laviolette talked about, is that these are never easy decisions for the Capitals to make. And the Capitals made some tough decisions as they waived Axel Jonsson-Fjällby, Brett Leason, Henrik Borgstrom, and Lucas Johansson. But, the bad news, I guess depends on how you want to look at it, is that Axel Jonsson-Fjällby was claimed by the Winnipeg Jets. and that Brett Leason was claimed by the Ducks. Now, there is always the remote possibility that they will release them and they could come back to the Capitals. But for me, how many times are you going to try to retread that Axel Jonsson-Fjällby tire? They've tried him multiple seasons and for whatever reason, he never seems to cut the mustard. So I think, for me, I'm taking a look at Axel Jonsson-Fjällby as the player. And, what I say is, you gave your best. And if you can find a spot somewhere else, more power to you. And I guess the same thing with Brett Leason, because he didn't really pop off the page in the preseason. How mad are you, or what are your thoughts, rather, on Axel Jonsson-Fjällby and Brett Leason getting claimed by two other teams?
Well, you know what they say. Sometimes when you love something, you've got to let them go, right? So, I thought we were looking at Carl Hagelin 2.0. Carl Hagelin has an incredible career. Even before he was with the Caps, he was a bona fide stud. We actually kind of got him in the twilight of his career, I think. So as good as he's been for us, he's been better elsewhere with New York and Pittsburgh. I don't think it really ever came together for Axel Jonsson-Fjällby. And then the problem is that, I do think that he could earn a NHL spot somewhere else. So again, I don't think we're going back for a third on that. Kind of disappointed to see Leason go. He was a big body from what I remember. But I just don't think that he had the offensive production that they wanted. So they had to ship him or really wave him down to Hershey. They would have taken him for free, but I think it's a good pickup by Anaheim. And I bet he'll probably be in the lineup this year. For both those players will probably play NHL time considerably this year.
Yeah, because I kind of had Axel Jonsson-Fjällby kind of penciled in as that fourth line left wing. But, taking a look at the lines out there, it was Sheary out there. So it's kind of been, I've heard Sheary and Protas, I guess, nothing set in stone here. All right, so after the break, we will talk about the net-minding tandem in Washington. It has gotten a lot better than last year. We'll talk about the chemistry between Strome and Connor Brown, and then we'll talk about Ovechkin's goal chase after the break. The numbers don't lie. In the last decade, over 4 million people have chosen Simply Safe Home Security to protect their home. You don't earn the trust of that many people without doing something right. At Simply Safe, your safety is the only thing that matters. I know because I use Simply Safe in my own home. They protect you with cutting-edge security technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who always have your back. Here's why I love it. I had an issue where someone broke into my home and Simply Safe dispatched someone and helped eliminate the situation. With 24/7 professional monitoring, Simply Safe's agents call you the moment a threat is detected and dispatch police or first responders in an emergency, even if you're not home or can't be reached. Simply Safe blankets your home in protection with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door, HD security cameras for inside and outside your home, smarter ways to detect motion that only alert you when a threat is real, and even hazard sensors that instantly detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. Our monitoring experts use proprietary advanced response technology to visually confirm when a break-in is real, so you can get the highest priority police dispatch. Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplysafe.com. Locked on NHL. Save 20% off on Simply Safe system when you sign up for interactive monitoring plan and get your first month free at simplysafe.com/lockedonnhl. To learn more, there's no safe like Simply Safe. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, where it's your team every day. In this episode, I am joined by hockey troll of the Caps Chirp Podcast. So one of the biggest moves made in the offseason, and it was one that I've spoke with you on your podcast a couple times about in various people in the offseason, is the net-minding tandem in Washington. It was a disaster, and they could never string together any wins. All of a sudden, they'd win a couple games here and everyone thought that, okay, we got this, our hot hand here, we can go with them. And, to be fair, between the both of them, they did get 100 points for this team. So But the big picture was that they could not string together wins. It was no Braden Holtby, for example. And I think that that is the benchmark, and that is what this Capitals fan base is used to, is excellence and consistency. And they didn't have that in Vanacek and Samsonov. Brian McClellan in the offseason did not give qualifying offers to either one of them, and really swung for the fences by getting Darcy Kuemper, the biggest name free agent netminder on the market, but he wasn't done yet. He ended up picking up Charlie Lindgren. So just taking a look at Darcy Kuemper, stopped 36 of 39 shots against Columbus in 3 preseason appearances. Kuemper posted a 2-0-0 record with a 1.97 goals against average and a .938 save percentage. Kuemper in 2.5 Capitals preseason games, 76 games, 5 goals, .938 save percentage, and a 1.97 goals against. And just kind of taking a look quickly at his stats from last year, in 57 games for Colorado in 21-22, Kuemper went 37-12-4 with a .921 save percentage and a 2.54 goals against. And then the rest is history. He went 10-4 and helped that Avalanche team win the Stanley Cup. What are your thoughts about Darcy Kuemper? Is he going to be the magic ingredient to help this Capitals team finally make it past the first round of the playoffs? This team has been snake bitten since 2018. Is Darcy the cure?
Well, I better hope so, man. No, I mean, we've talked about it. I think that really the problem last year was not just one thing. Putting it all in the goaltending position is a little tough. But I will say, like you alluded to, you got to have consistency in net. I think Kuemper has shown he's got at this point, you're a Stanley Cup champ, you're a veteran, you've bounced around a couple teams, you're landing in DC. He's got the chance to play with some legends on this team and give it another go. We paid him pretty well, and we paid him for a lower term, right? I think it's 3 years, or was it 5?
Yeah, it was a 5-year deal. Yes.
5. Okay. So we got a midterm contract out of him. We're hoping that his stock stays high. I think the Caps, like you said, needed that consistency though. We would have, the leaky goal at the inopportune time was, a few too many for both goalies. I thought Vanacek was probably the better guy for the team. And I think that the rest of the NHL did too, because somebody paid something for him. New Jersey paid for Vanacek with a pick, and he's going to tear it up there, I'm sure. And for Samsonov, we just let him walk. That's a first round pick gone. And Toronto bought him, so that'll be interesting to see. I think that the reoccurring theme here in this episode, Dan, is if you love things, you got to let them go, right? So I think they're going to do well where they're at. They needed maybe a little bit of a support. I think they both got too much of a taste of a starter in them. And, maybe that messed with their heads when they were down, but maybe a team that has some veteran leadership there in the goaltending position would be a better fit for them. Samsonov's got Matt Murray, and I think there's a veteran in New Jersey that Vanacek's actually probably going to have to fight for the number 1 starter position.
Yeah, Mackenzie Blackwood is the big one, if memory serves, out in New Jersey there. So it's going to be a battle. I saw, a little clip of Vanacek playing for the Devils in preseason, and it's tough to gauge preseason like you've talked about, but just to kind of see, what he has in the tank is a bit interesting to see. So one of the things that's not spoke of often about Darcy Kuemper, and I spoke about this with Matt Wyrick, and I don't want to overemphasize it, but just, kind of making facts out there. According to NHL Injury Viz, the 31-year-old has missed 83 games through injury since his NHL debut in 12-13 and 50 in the last 2 seasons alone. So I am a bit concerned. He has never really been a netminder that's carried the bulk of the mail for any of the teams that he's played on. So I think, to a certain extent, it was a good idea that they went with Charlie Lindgren, still a bit of an unproven commodity. He was kind of lights out for the Thunderbirds, the Blues AHL affiliate, and played well for the Blues in a brief stint. How concerned are you about Darcy Kuemper's kind of being prone for injury? And what are your thoughts on Charlie Lindgren?
Oh, man, come on. Kuemper's so shiny and new. We can't be bagging him yet, right? Yeah, man, you're right. I mean, that is a disconcerting stat that you've just rattled off to me for sure. It definitely gives me pause. But at the same time, I think that Lindgren's got to be looking at this contract is a big step up. He's going to get full-time NHL time unless, somebody from AHL can outplay him, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So I think that the coaching staff and the scouts are for the Caps are high on this guy. Largely kind of, he came out of nowhere. I trust that the Caps scouts have done their due diligence on the goaltending position. You look all the way back to before Braden Holtby, when Braden Holtby was stealing the net. We had Newverth, we had and Varlamov even. We had a couple good
Thomas Vokoun.
Yeah, right. Thomas Vokoun, who who still I don't think he's playing in the US anymore, but man, he was good for us. So, we can pick him right. I wish this guy the best of luck, and I think he's going to do well. I really do, because he was almost undefeated, I believe, or was undefeated in St. Louis in his 7 starts. Right. So, I'll take it. Let's see what he's got. I think that just having Kuemper alone to, play, 40 games, 45 games, play the actual majority of games is going to help this team. And like you said, hopefully I'm just seeing some consistency here.
Yeah, I guess that's all we can really hope for at the end of the day. All right, so after the break here, we will talk about the chemistry between Dylan Strome and Connor Brown, and then we'll talk about Alex Ovechkin's goal chase of Gordie Howe, and then eventually Wayne Gretzky. We'll talk about that next. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, where it's your team every day. In this episode, I am joined by Hockey Troll of the Caps Chirp Podcast. And just taking a look, a big offseason acquisition was Dylan Strome to fill in for Nick Backstrom, who we all know had that hip resurfacing procedure done. Dylan Strome came into this team kind of discarded by the Chicago Blackhawks, which, kind of seems, like I said, a dumpster fire burning out of control. The Capitals signed the former Blackhawks center to a 1-year deal worth $3.5 million. And, I think that, it was a good fit. And what I've seen of him in the preseason, he is as advertised. He is coming off a strong year with the Blackhawks that saw him dish 22 goals and 26 assists in 69 games. So it kind of makes you wonder, why did the Blackhawks want to move on from Dylan Strome? Are they trying to tank already? It just seems like kind of an odd situation where they're moving all these players out that were, kind of, I think, building blocks to help them move forward. Give me your thoughts on Dylan Strome and what I've seen so far. He's good at winning in the face-off dot, and I think that he is a good Band-Aid, if you will, for Nick Backstrom. And I think that his flexibility to play at wing will suit the Capitals well if, for whatever reason, Backstrom comes back earlier.
Yeah, and don't forget about Chicago. The cherry on top is they signed Jack Johnson, so they're definitely going to win a cup now. So. Dylan Strome, man, I love the term. I love this deal. It's very much a year-long PTO, I think. Can you replicate this success? Can you get better? If so, that's awesome. Eventually, we're going to have to replace Backstrom. I think that, unfortunately, the team had to make moves in the worst-case scenario where Backstrom does not come back at all. I know. I put that out there in the universe. I feel really dirty about it. I would hate to see this team without Nick Backstrom, but that hip resurfacing surgery is, oftentimes a career ender. It's very tough to come back from. So I think that the Caps made the right play, said, hey, if it doesn't work out after a year, you can walk and I'm sure you'll get paid again, but we'd really like you to find a home here. So I'm loving it. I'm really looking at him to light it up. I would love to see that.
Yeah, and just kind of, a pleasant surprise, I guess you will. I never really doubted Dylan Strome, but, I was a bit concerned, of course, when Nick Backstrom was going to miss a substantial amount of time. So the other big offseason acquisition is Connor Brown, whose specialty is on the penalty kill. As we know, he played seasons with the Senators and the Maple Leafs. He is slated to be on the top line right wing with Ovechkin and Kuznetsov. I don't think he could ask for anything more than that. Earlier in the show, I was talking about the chemistry. So Connor Brown and Dylan Strome don't generally play on the same line together, but in the preseason, there was a couple really great moments where they had a tic-tac-toe goal and just set up each other really well. So I was pleasantly surprised with Connor Brown as well. Brown, who has played 7 NHL seasons, like I said, with the Leafs and Senators, scored 10 goals with 29 assists in 64 games played last season. He's posted a career best 21 goals, which he did in the 2021 season with the Ottawa Senators. And, from listening to the Locked On Senators guy, they kind of, were a little upset that, they moved on from him. He kind of logged a lot of minutes on that Ottawa Senators team. Talk to me a little bit about your thoughts on Connor Brown and, what kind of role do you think he's going to fit on this team?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the number one thing that they went after, or, McClellan went after in the offseason was versatility, right? We're looking at a bunch of players who can play up and down. You've got, Lars Eller, Dylan Strome, Connor Sheary, inject some new guys in that are kind of interchangeable. And then this Brown guy. So I like the pickup. I thought Brian McClellan did an A+ job, man, in the offseason with what he could do. He had no room, he had no cap space, he had no money, and he went out and got a solid, center, which is hard for 1 year. That's if it's a total failure, toss him out with the water, right. And then with this Connor Brown pickup was huge. I like it a lot. So. I'm thinking he's going to do well. Like I said at the top of the show, I think that this team really got better, noticeably deeper with these two acquisitions, even with Tom Wilson and Backstrom out. I love those guys. And if Backstrom comes back and Wilson comes back, the Caps are going to have to do some cap juggling, right. Work some magic for sure. And then who knows what happens there. But for now, I think that the expectation with these guys are probably going to miss considerable time. So we got to just, address the problem at hand, that we still got a season to play. And I think McClellan did just a wonderful job of that.
Yeah. And I think everyone was kind of hard on Brian McClellan, myself included, but he totally redeemed himself in the offseason. And I've listened to all the NHL talking heads, and they're already saying that this team is a bubble team, maybe a wild card team. Everyone's picking Carolina or New York to lead the Metro division, but I still have faith in this team. And the biggest reason I have faith in this team is Alex Ovechkin. Ovechkin has 780 goals. He's 21 away from number 2 Gordie Howe and 114 from number 1 Wayne Gretzky. He could very well pass Howe net this season and Gretzky the season after. One of the first things that Ovechkin said in the pressers at MedStar is that he's like, listen, guys, I'm not going to score those 21 goals in one game. I want to concentrate more on this team winning another cup. Talk to me about Ovechkin. It's interesting. We are watching in real time him peel off all these different milestones, one after one. We're not watching it in some archival footage. We're seeing it in real time. We can tell our kids and our grandkids that we saw Ovechkin on the ice, much in the same way our parents and grandparents talked to us about Wayne Gretzky. Talk to me about Ovechkin and his chase for Gordie Howe and then eventually Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah, you know what, man? I mean, I look at players who in history who are kind of like Ovechkin. I don't think there's ever really been one true Ovechkin, especially with the longevity and the insane amount of buckets of goals that he scored throughout, so consistently throughout his career. I don't know if you'll ever find that again, but it's funny because I liken his game a lot to like what I've seen in archival footage of Gordie Howe, fighting, being physical, being a physical presence back then. Part of that was fighting, but, playing the body, but also being able to bury the puck at an incredible rate. So, it's fun. It's just so fitting that these two are battling it out this season. I 100% agree. I think he'll get there. I don't know. I mean, we were talking about that shot that he took against Columbus in the last preseason game, just absolutely put it right through Mizlurkins, who is their starter. I mean, it was beautiful. So that's something that, he's born with. He's going to have for the rest of his career, the ability to shoot the puck. So I'm looking forward to it. I think that he's going to absolutely eclipse Gordie Howe, and I think and I'm totally biased and homered here, but at least 50 goals, at least.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I always say. Don't ever sleep on Alex Ovechkin. He had that dip a few years ago, and everyone was even saying, they should trade him. He's, past his prime, and, the gray hair keeps coming in, and he's looking older in the face. I can't really say too much. I'm 45, but he is getting better and better with time here. So, Hockey Troll, thank you for joining us on this edition of Locked On Capitals. Why don't you tell all of our listeners and viewers where we can find your podcast and your work?
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's always a pleasure coming on. Thanks for the invite. And thanks for coming on last Thursday. That was awesome. You can find me at Hockey Trollin with an IN on Twitter. And you can find the Caps Chirp podcast on at Caps Chirp on Twitter as well. I think we're on TikTok, Instagram, all at Caps Chirp. And the Hockey Podcast Network at thehockeypodcastnetwork.com.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us on this episode. Thank you for making Locked On Capitals your first listen today. Now make your second listen Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Steele Roden and Flip Livingstone bring you the fantasy edge and keep you ahead of the competition with daily updates of news, analysis, and advice Monday through Friday, available on YouTube, Odyssey, and wherever you get your podcast. So once again, thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, where it's your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.